Today, like Monica mentioned, we're talking about GitHub Pages. I've titled this GitHub Pages Reimagined, Deploying Your First Website Without Leaving Your IDE. So I'm going to start off with a non-technical topic, more of like a historical or maybe geography topic about the country of Guyana. So this is where my parents are born, and it's located in South America, pretty close to like Brazil and Venezuela and Suriname. People often get it confused with Ghana. Like I'll be like, oh, my parents are from Guyana, and they're like, oh, in Africa, I know that place. But no, it just sounds like Ghana, but it's located in South America. And I think the country is pretty interesting because it's the only South American country where the official language is English. Although there are 13 other languages spoken, or more, but 13 other main languages like Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Hindi, and so many more. It's kind of a melting pot, I would say, because even the culture, the food, the music, and the language are heavily influenced by Indian and Afro-Caribbean culture. And when I say the language, I'm talking about like their English dialect that they speak. They speak something called Guyanese Creole, and you can kind of compare that or say it's similar to Jamaican patois, if you're familiar with that. So I say that all of this to say one of my favorite things about their culture is not just the food or the music or other things, it's some of the sayings they have. And now I'm going to try to say this. Nobody laugh at me if you're Guyanese or from the Caribbean. I'm pretty Americanized at this point. But one of the funniest sayings that my mom always says to me is monkey make you pick me till he spoil him. And what that means is it's essentially saying don't try to overdo things. Keep it simple. My mom will always say that to me if I was like making food and she saw me like putting too many ingredients, like too much seasoning, or if I was doing like an arts and craft project and she saw me just like putting mad glitter and stickers or something like that on it when I was a kid, she would always say that. And the reason I bring this up is because I think we have a similar saying or concept in tech, and it is an acronym called KISS. It stands for keep it simple, stupid, but I don't really like the stupid part. Sounds a little crass and rude. So I just like to say keep it simple. And that's what I'm gonna just say for the rest of this talk. And I know that we have this saying in tech, and we say we go by this process or this concept, but it does make me wonder, have we taken our own advice? And I will elaborate a little bit more on that, but first I'll introduce myself. I know Monica introduced me, but I'll introduce myself again. So my name is Rizèl Scarlett. I'm a junior developer advocate at GitHub. Prior to becoming a developer advocate, I was a software engineer at startups for about 3 years. I'm an advisor and I was a director at G Code, which is an organization that teaches women of color and non-binary people of color to code. And I will say I'm passionate about social media, but some people might say addicted. So if you also are on the interwebs or social media, feel free to follow me at Black Girl Bites on Twitter, Instagram, dev.2 and Hashnode. I write a lot of blog posts there. And then on Twitch, I'm Black Girl Bites 1 because I forgot my credentials and got myself locked out of my account. All right, so back to the whole, like, have we taken our own advice at keeping it simple? I wanna bring up some nostalgia and throw us back to the internet around the 90s and early 2000s. So this was my internet around that time. Keep in mind, I'm 26. So around that time, I was like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I was still young. So maybe this isn't your internet, but maybe there's some things here that you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. So right here is a game I used to play called like My Scene Nails or something like that. And basically you would just be doing manicures on dolls' nails. And then there was Neopets. I loved Neopets. There was also Millsberry. To me, that was like Sims for kids. And then there was AIM, where you did like instant messaging with your friends. I also was on the Doll Palace a lot. It was just like a dress-up game, and then LimeWire, where I was illegally downloading music, but like I'm assuming everybody else was, so so hopefully I don't get in trouble. But one of my favorite throwbacks from back in the day or back in those times of the internet, is Myspace. I loved Myspace. I was on that 24/7. I actually signed up for it before I was like appropriate age. Like they had an age limit and I was like 11, and I'm like, I'm signing up and I'm just going to use my mom's birthday or whatever. I loved it because I got to do my top 8, and it put like a little music player and stuff like that. It was kind of just like my self-expression on a page, and it actually really encouraged me to learn HTML and CSS, even though I didn't know that was what I was learning. And it wasn't like today's HTML and CSS. It wasn't HTML5 and CSS3. It was like back in the day HTML and CSS. But I was really writing a lot of HTML and CSS, and part of that motivation was like, 20% creative expression. I want to express myself. But then the 80% was I want to have a cooler profile page than some of my friends. I was like, oh my gosh, they added this. I need to add that. So I would like figure out how to make things bolded or have glitter coming down or like have a marquee going across the page. It was good times. And I think, like, as you can see from these examples, the web's not really like that anymore. So much has changed, and they've become more complex as well, because we're not just having like these basic HTML pages and people are like happy to use them. You gotta have the works. So as web apps become more complex, so does web development. And like, this is my poorly made graph at how the web has evolved since. It's not completely accurate, but so basically, I think like we started off with HTML and then we moved into like component based architecture with like frameworks like React and Vue, and now we're coming up with these concepts of reactivity and hydration and partial hydration. Even it was such a cool thing to be able to use JavaScript on the back end with Node.js, and now we have Bun, which is like JavaScript's fastest runtime, and we started off like building on different servers, and now we're moving over to developing in containers and using edge functions. And I have the question to y'all. I have this question to y'all: do we actually need all of these? And I think naturally will evolve, like in our technologies. Like that's what's supposed to happen. We're humans with knowledge, and I think the evolution is beneficial, but I think we need to challenge ourselves some more, to say, should I use this or should I implement this because I need it, or is it because it's trendy? Because in my opinion, jQuery kind of did the job. Like we were okay with that, right? But maybe some people will disagree. And I noticed myself, perhaps I've opted for more complexity and more steps and more complexity as well. So I'm actually going to, I should have shared all of my screen, but instead I just shared one tab. So I'm going to go to show y'all a website that I made when I first started at GitHub. I was kind of like, I don't know what DevRel is and what I'm supposed to be doing here. So I'll just make a website and play around with GitHub's API. So I made this, and it's a website called Cutemoji. It doesn't do too much, but basically has a fuzzy search for the different GitHub API emojis. So if I look up the word BOO, book will come up, bookmark tabs, pretty much just that. And like the technologies that I've used to build it, I use Next.js, Tailwind CSS. I use this fuzzy search open source tool called Fuse.js. And then I uploaded it to S3 bucket, and I used Pulumi to connect to AWS. And I feel like I overcomplicated this, right? Like I could have easily just wrote HTML and CSS and then uploaded this on GitHub Pages. And let me go back to my slides really quickly. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can get to where I was at. Get big. All right. So yeah, taking a step back, I realized maybe I could have just used GitHub Pages for this. Why was I using all of these other technologies to do one thing? And I think there's an ease of use there, right? Like to be able to host my static web app where I store my code is way less to think about, way less energy. Now I won't have random charges from AWS and I'm not like, wait a minute, why am I paying 5 cents a month for this? um, and really quickly, I'm going to take a step back and tell y'all what GitHub Pages is if you're not familiar. It's a feature that was like created around the same time that GitHub was created in 2008, and it allows you to host static web applications for free. So this concept in GitHub is not new, but it's kind of underutilized, even though I do think there's simplicity in GitHub Pages. Like I mentioned, you can host your static web app right where your code lives. I think for myself, I probably had hosted one static web page for most of my career. And that was like my first portfolio that I ever made. And I kind of abandoned that. And I see people do similar things. Maybe they'll use it for documentation or like their first blog or their first portfolio, and then they'll abandon it. But I want to reintroduce it to you. And I started thinking about different sectors of people or different levels of people in web development. I was thinking maybe for beginner developers, it's a little bit more difficult to use GitHub Pages. Not because the process of using GitHub Pages is hard, but because GitHub itself looks a little scary. Like I remember learning in coding bootcamp, and I didn't know how to make a pull request. I was like, this thing looks like rocket science. I'm not going to touch it. So I ended up making a VS Code extension where you can deploy an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript web app without leaving your IDE. So completely static. Remember that, no databases. And I'm going to show a demo video of that happening. So I'm going a little fast, but basically I opened this up in code spaces. I opened up my repo and you can see that I have an HTML file that says hey on it, and I'm going to install my extension that I created called deploy to GitHub Pages. So I go ahead and I install that. Once it's installed, I can leverage the command palette to actually interact with it. So I click deploy to GitHub Pages, and it's going to ask me to authenticate, which is what you got to do with like every extension. And now once I authenticate it, it shows me a list of different repos that I want to push, and I choose the one that I want, which is this one, and I publish it, and it tells me that in a few minutes, this website will be available at this link. What happens when you deploy to GitHub Pages is it triggers an action. So I'm just checking out the action right now on the Actions tab. So first it's going to build it. Then it's going to go ahead and do a deploy and all that other stuff. I'd like to look at the logs just in case anything's failed and I need to go ahead and fix it. So all of this looks like a whole bunch of words, but it's often telling you what's going on and why is it happening. So it was successful for me. And once it's successful, it gives me that URL. And oh, I think I cut it off in the screenshot, but I did not realize that when I practiced. But basically, that area had like a web page that said hey. So pretend you've seen that. So I figured that part out for beginner developers. And then I thought, what is the benefit for an experienced engineer to actually use this? Because I know for myself, even though I'm talking about keeping it simple, I did move on to other frameworks like React and Vue. And I did feel like I wanted to default to deploying on newer, trendier technologies like Netlify and Rizèl. So I was like, whoa, why would I use GitHub Pages? But the cool thing is recently GitHub Pages released an easy, cool way to deploy different static site generators to GitHub Pages. And I'm going to show you how. So when I say static site generators, I'm talking Next.js, I'm talking Astro, I'm talking 11D. Any static site generator you can think of, as long as it doesn't have a backend, can now easily work with GitHub Pages. And hopefully this demo isn't cut off. So I'm first going to demo this working with Next.js. GitHub actually created a couple of like templated workflows. So they have one for Next.js, they have one for Hugo, they have one for Jekyll, and a few others. So I'm going to show one with Next.js and then one with Astro. And Astro doesn't have a templated workflow already created, but I'll show you how you can do that yourself. So in this video, again, I'm going to go to the settings page or tab in my repo. And instead of deploying from a branch, I'm going to choose GitHub Actions. And it was able to determine that I want to use Next.js, or I'm deploying a Next.js site actually. And what is created is a GitHub Action workflow already set up for me. And I'm just going to commit it because I trust that it's right. Once I commit it, I can go to the Actions tab and see it running in real time. Again, just like the other one, I can see the build and deploy logs to check if it's actually successful. So setting up the job, it's doing the checkout process. This part takes a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah, set up node and all that. Now it's done, and I can go ahead and hopefully I click it. Yeah, I can go ahead and click the link, and actually I have something now, and this is a Next.js site I built, and it's like a little restaurant menu type thing. So that worked out, and that was like not too many steps, right? Now let's talk about demoing, or let's talk about if there's no actual template for it. So as we saw, Next.js had like a templated workflow. What will we do if we're using something like Astro? Well, you can actually take that templated workflow and just edit parts of it to work for your actual or your specific static site generator. So here, I actually already made the workflow, and the only things you need to worry about changing as I scroll down is like, are you going to be using npm? Is the command to install your dependencies npm CI? Is the thing to build it npm run build? And is the folder, I wish I would go a little bit slower. Hold on, I'll pause it right here. Well, let me show it one more time. But I wanted to pause at the area where I am, go ahead and play, where I'm showing the build folder. So when you run npm run build, Astro creates a dist folder. Some other frameworks may create a .build folder. So you got to check that out and make sure you just edit those 3 sections. And then after that, you'll be able to deploy it to GitHub Pages. So I've committed that, and I'm going to go ahead and set up GitHub Pages like I did before. And GitHub Pages thinks maybe this might be a Jekyll or a HTML site, but it's not correct. So I'm just going to go ahead and run my action. I see the build start up, and then it's going to go through the deploy process as well. And let's have that happen. And installing dependencies takes a while. But I will actually, what I'm going to do is go to the website live, because I cut that off in the video too. Sorry, y'all. Astro. Yeah, but here it is. I have an Astro site that's completely live after running that GitHub action. Okay, back to the slides, and we are essentially almost done, y'all. Okay, so we have that. And I just want to leave y'all with 3 thoughts after seeing all of this. I want to leave y'all with making sure you keep your web development workflow as simple as necessary. If you do need that complexity, yes, please do that. But keep it simple so that it's not overwhelming for you, especially in terms of cost and maintenance. And then also check out my extension if you want to deploy your first website, and try deploying in a static site generator with GitHub Pages on the Actions workflow. I want to thank Front End Froxes for having me speak, and then also thank y'all for listening in. Bye.
Thank you so much, Rizèl, for your presentation. I must say that I loved the slides that you use. It felt like I was checking my father's computer all over again. Me as a kid that's trying
Yeah,
to
I
check
like
out
the
his
old
computer.
school look.
Yeah, that was really, really cool.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I have a curiosity. Do you have your emojis API live where
Yeah,
we can check it?
yes, I can put the.
It was so
It's a
fun. I was
really
so
long
curious to
link.
just try out.
Thank you. Where should I post it? In the private chat or the? Well, I guess it's the only place I
In
can post.
our crowdcast,
Oh,
yes, in
Crowdcast.
our
Hold on
chat.
a second. I will do that. And click open link. And let me post it in there. Sorry, so many monitors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have the link now. I can also
Okay.
share.
Thank you. Sorry.
So not only for me, but for everyone. Here it go.
Thank you.
Another thing is, do you have your tutorials somewhere? It is really
Yes, I actually have like blog posts on how to do this. So can I post it in the private chat again and then you post it to
feel
Crowdcast?
free
Okay,
to.
thank you so much.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
very curious about that. I never used that before. So I use GitHub Pages for normal HTML, CSS projects, not with React or Next or wherever. I always use Netlify to do the build for me.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
how I
was
was
like,
too.
what?
Yep.
GitHub does that? I need to try that.
That's how I was as well, like before I started working here. And then I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool that we can actually do this. I put two blog posts,
Okay.
one for like something like Astro and then the other for Next.js.
Sharing with the audience.
Yeah.
Here it goes. So this is our last talk of the day, and anyone has any question that wants to ask to Rizal? It's your last opportunity. Please do.
And it's okay. I completely understand after a long day of like conference talks, your brain starts to go to goo.
Oh, yeah, a little, a little. Okay, so another thing that I felt a curiosity is what's your favorite? Oh, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correct. SSG?
Yeah, static site generator.
Mm-hmm.
I would say right now I'm really liking Astro. Really liking Astro. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't tried it yet, but I hear all the fuzz about the fuzz about Hasbro, so I need to also try that out.
Yeah,
And
me
now you
too.
got me so excited with your presentation that I want to try everything that you showed.
I, yeah, I'm glad. Even though there was like a couple slip ups here and there. Yeah, I think one of the cool things about Astro is that like it's mostly HTML based and you can put in any components you want. Like if you're using React or Vue or Svelte, like they can all be in one like code base and still work pretty well together. Yeah, I think it's just a very flexible.
Yeah, that is totally true. I need really to try that. Okay, I'm just checking out if someone else has any question. I'm checking also the chat. That's why I'm just looking like this because I don't see quite nice the smaller words. Okay, so I guess we are ending our event. Thank you so much, Rizel.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Bye.
Bye bye.